I'm Elise Falgout, and this is my Finance 381 project for the spring of 2016. For my project, I compared Hornbeck, Sally's Beauty Holdings, and JCPenney. Throughout the presentation, there will be multiple line graphs. In these, Hornbeck is represented by blue, Sally's is orange, and JCPenney's is gray. Let me begin by saying that I chose two companies that are unfortunately not doing very well. After analyzing their financial data, it seems Sally's has an equity problem and JCPenney has a serious income problem. It was not difficult to decide which of the three to lend to or in. First, we'll start with the short-term loan of $1 million. For this, we'll look at their cash and current ratios. While Hornbeck seems to be the least stable, their liquidity ratios are obviously higher than both Sally's and JCPenney's for the last 5 years. In 2011, Hornbeck was at 3.99, and then they jumped up to 6.96, and then fell all the way down to 2.13 in 2013. Then they jumped back up to 6.1, and then down to 4.05, and now for this year in 2016, they're at 4.26. As for their cash ratio, in 2011, they started with 2.34, and then they jumped all the way up to 5.3, and then 2013 fell way down to 1.68, and then jumped back up to 4.32, then fell back down to 2.23, and now they're sitting around 3.04. It's very obvious that while they were slightly lower than Sally's in 2013, but they still jumped up in 2014, that they would be the best choice for the short-term loan, considering that no matter what, they're still higher than the other two companies throughout the entire 5 years. Next, look at the long-term loan. This is where we will look at the equity multiplier and the times interest earned ratios. This is also where Sally's and JCPenney's really show their weaknesses. Bloomberg had no available data for Sally's equity multiplier, and the only number that was given for JCPenney's time interest earned was a ratio of negative 0.01 in 2012. The rest of the years had no information. However, you can see that Sally's times interest earned ratios do seem to show a better coverage of their interest payments than Hornbeck's. The fact that they don't have any equity hurts them whenever it comes to being considered for a long-term loan. Because of this, and then because JCPenney seems to not be able to cover their interest at all, their interest payments at all, I would have to say that the two ratios in tandem with each other would obviously show Hornbeck to be the best option for the long-term loan as well as the short-term loan. Next, we'll look at who we would want to invest in. After analyzing the companies for the last two questions, the answer to which I would invest in was an easy conclusion to come to. For this, we'll look at the return on equity and their return on assets, and then on the next slide, we'll go through and break down the return on equity a little bit more with the profit margin, total asset turnover, and once again, the equity multiplier. As you can see from these graphs, JCPenney is immediately eliminated. Their return on equity as well as their return on assets pretty much stays in the negative, and in 2014, they hit a negative 44.36, which to me is really, really bad. Whenever just looking at this, I almost wonder how they're even still running at all. And once again, we can see that Sally's has absolutely no equity, which hurts them on almost any venture that they would even want to be considered for. But you can also see that they do very, very well with their assets, which is probably a good thing for them considering everything else. Furthermore, when you break down the return on equity, you can see that Hornbeck's profit margin is substantially better than the other two as well. And they're pretty consistent between the mid-20s and low 30s. However, Sally's also stays very, very consistent. And once again, JCPenney goes into the negative whenever they get into 2013 at a negative 10.09, and they just fall, and they are seeming to work their way back up. When you move over to their asset turnover, unfortunately, Hornbeck is the worst at turning their assets over, but this in tandem with the rest of the ratios would still prove that they would be a better choice anyways. You see that Sally's is pretty good with their price earnings per share, and they're very, very stable whenever it comes to this. But once again, it doesn't make everything else just disappear, considering you can see once again that they have absolutely no equity to stand with. The only thing JCPenney's really has going for them is that they do have a good equity multiplier. All in all, I think it's pretty obvious that Hornbeck would have to be the best option for all three questions. As for the short-term loan, the long-term loan, or who I would invest in. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm sorry if I sound a little nervous, because I am. But thank you, and have a really good night.